The wind howled through the narrow alleyways of downtown Seattle, carrying with it the bitter cold of another unforgiving winter night. Marcus Sullivan huddled beneath a tattered blanket in his usual spot behind the old bakery, watching as the last of the evening's pedestrians hurried past without so much as a glance in his direction. At 53 years old, he had become invisible to the world, just another face in the growing crowd of forgotten souls who called the streets their home. Life had not always been this way for Marcus. There was a time when he wore pressed suits and carried a briefcase, when he had a wife, a daughter, and a modest home in the suburbs. But that was before the accident, before the medical bills piled up like mountains of unpayable debt, before his wife left and took their daughter with her, before the drinking started and the job disappeared. The descent had been swift and merciless, and now here he was, counting his blessings if he managed to find a warm meal and a dry place to sleep. The morning sun broke through the clouds with reluctant warmth as Marcus stirred from his fitful sleep. His bones ached with the familiar pain of sleeping on concrete, and his stomach growled with a hunger that had become his constant companion. He folded his blanket carefully, tucking it into his worn backpack along with his few possessions: a change of clothes, a water bottle, a dog-eared paperback novel, and a photograph of his daughter that he kept wrapped in plastic to protect it from the elements. As he made his way toward the soup kitchen on 5th Avenue, Marcus noticed a well-dressed man standing near the corner, looking around as if searching for someone. The man held a leather briefcase and wore an expression of determined patience. When their eyes met, the man's face lit up with recognition, though Marcus was certain they had never met before. "Excuse me, sir," the man called out, approaching with cautious steps. "Are you Marcus Sullivan?" Marcus tensed, his instincts telling him to be wary. Nothing good ever came from strangers who knew your name. "Who's asking?" he replied, his voice rough from disuse. The man extended his hand in greeting. "My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney with Morrison and Associates. I've been trying to locate you for the past 6 months. It's regarding the estate of your uncle, Theodore Sullivan." Marcus stared at the outstretched hand, his mind racing. Uncle Theodore. He had not thought about that name in decades. Theodore had been his father's older brother, a reclusive man who had left the family when Marcus was just a boy. There had been some kind of falling out, the details of which were never fully explained to him. As far as Marcus knew, Theodore had disappeared into the wilderness somewhere up north and had never been heard from again. "My uncle," Marcus said slowly, finally shaking the attorney's hand. "I didn't even know he was still alive." "I'm afraid he passed away 8 months ago," Robert said with practiced sympathy. "He lived alone in a cabin in the mountains of northern Idaho. According to his will, you are his sole surviving heir." The words seemed to hang in the cold air between them. Marcus felt a strange mixture of emotions: grief for an uncle he barely remembered, confusion about why Theodore would leave him anything, and a desperate hope that perhaps this might be the lifeline he so desperately needed. "I don't understand," Marcus said. "Why me? We weren't close. I barely remember him." Robert pulled a folder from his briefcase and opened it carefully. "Your uncle's will is quite specific. It states that his property, including a cabin and the surrounding land, should go to you. There are no other assets listed, no bank accounts or investments, just the cabin and approximately 40 acres of forested land." Marcus felt his hope deflating like a punctured balloon. A cabin in the middle of nowhere was hardly the salvation he had imagined. He could not afford to maintain property, could not pay the taxes on it, could not even afford the bus ticket to go see it. It was just another cruel joke from a universe that seemed determined to keep him down. "I appreciate you tracking me down," Marcus said, his voice heavy with resignation. "But I don't think I can accept it. I can't afford to own property. The taxes alone would bury me." Robert held up a hand to stop him. "The taxes are current, paid through the end of this year from your uncle's remaining funds. And before you make any decisions, I think you should at least see the place. My firm has been authorized to provide you with transportation and a small stipend to cover your expenses for the trip. Your uncle was very insistent in his will that you should have the opportunity to visit the cabin before deciding what to do with it. Marcus studied the attorney's face, searching for signs of deception or mockery, but found only earnest professionalism. What did he have to lose? His life on the streets would still be here if he returned, but perhaps, just perhaps, there might be something in that cabin worth selling, something that could give him a fresh start. "All right," Marcus said finally. "I'll go see it." 3 days later, Marcus found himself in a rental car, driving up a winding mountain road that seemed to lead to the edge of the world. Robert had arranged everything. The car, a GPS device with the cabin's coordinates programmed in, some cash for food and gas, and even a new set of clothes so Marcus would not have to make the journey in his street-worn garments. It had been years since anyone had shown him such kindness, and Marcus found himself fighting back unexpected tears as he navigated the increasingly narrow roads. The GPS announced his arrival just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Marcus pulled the car onto a barely visible dirt path that wound through towering pine trees. After a quarter-mile, the path opened into a small clearing, and there it stood, his uncle's cabin. It was larger than Marcus had expected, a 2-story structure built from weathered logs that had turned silver-gray with age. The roof appeared intact, though covered with pine needles and moss. The windows were shuttered from the inside, giving the place a closed, secretive appearance. A covered porch wrapped around the front, and Marcus could see a stone chimney rising from one side of the building. He sat in the car for a long moment, simply staring at the structure. This was his now, this piece of the wilderness, this monument to his uncle's solitary existence. The thought was both overwhelming and surreal. Finally, Marcus gathered his courage and stepped out of the car. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and earth. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of wind through the trees and the distant call of a bird. After years of the city's constant noise, the quiet was almost disorienting. The attorney had given him a set of keys, and Marcus climbed the porch steps with cautious footfalls, testing each board for stability. To his surprise, the porch seemed solid, well constructed. He fitted the largest key into the lock on the front door, and it turned with only slight resistance. The door swung open with a long creak, revealing the dim interior. Marcus felt along the wall and found a light switch, though he had little hope that the electricity would be working. To his amazement, lights flickered on, revealing a large main room that served as both living area and kitchen. The cabin was dusty and filled with the musty smell of a place long closed, but it was not the abandoned wreck Marcus had feared. Furniture sat arranged around a large stone fireplace, a couch, 2 chairs, a handmade wooden table. The kitchen area featured an old but functional-looking stove and refrigerator, along with cabinets and a deep sink. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on nature, philosophy, and survival skills. Marcus moved through the space slowly, taking in every detail. Stairs led to a second floor, which he discovered contained 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom. The furniture was simple but well-made, much of it appearing to be handcrafted. His uncle had lived here, Marcus realized, not as a hermit in squalor, but as a man who had chosen solitude and had made a comfortable life within it. As darkness fell outside, Marcus explored the cabin more thoroughly. He found the water still running, drawn from what must be a well. The propane tank that fed the stove and a wall heater was half full. In the pantry, he discovered shelves lined with canned goods, most of them expired but some still within their use-by dates. There was coffee, sugar, flour sealed in airtight containers, and even a few bottles of whiskey, though Marcus pushed those to the back of the shelf without touching them. That night Marcus built a fire in the fireplace, using wood from a neatly stacked pile on the back porch. He heated a can of soup on the stove and ate it slowly, savoring each spoonful. Then he sat in one of the chairs before the fire, wrapped in a blanket he had found in a cedar chest, and simply existed in the warmth and safety of his inherited shelter. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a different future. Perhaps he could live here, at least for a while. He could figure out the property taxes, maybe find some work in whatever town was nearest. It would be a hard life, certainly, but it would be his life, lived in dignity rather than desperation. The thought brought a smile to his weathered face as he drifted off to sleep in the chair, the fire crackling softly before him. The next morning, Marcus woke to sunlight streaming through the windows. His neck was stiff from sleeping in the chair, but he felt more rested than he had in months. He made coffee using the ancient percolator he had found in a cabinet, and the rich aroma filled the cabin with a sense of normalcy and comfort. After breakfast, Marcus decided to explore the cabin more systematically. He wanted to understand what his uncle had left behind, to get a sense of the man who had lived here in such deliberate isolation. He started upstairs, going through the bedrooms more carefully than he had the night before. The master bedroom was spartanly furnished. A bed, a dresser, a nightstand with a lamp and a small stack of books. In the dresser drawers, Marcus found clothes that were old but well-maintained, along with some personal items, a pocket watch, a compass, a folding knife with an ivory handle. In the nightstand drawer, he discovered a journal. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and opened the journal carefully. The entries were sporadic, sometimes weeks or months apart, written in a careful, precise hand. They spoke of daily life in the cabin, observations about the changing seasons, notes about repairs that needed to be made. But they also revealed something deeper, a man seeking peace from some unnamed pain, finding solace in the rhythms of nature and the satisfaction of self-sufficiency. One entry caught Marcus's attention. It was dated nearly 5 years earlier and read, "I think often of my brother's son, Marcus. I hear through distant channels that his life has taken difficult turns. I wish I could reach out, but I have been gone too long, have burned too many bridges. Perhaps in death I can offer what I could not in life, a place of refuge, a chance to start again. I hope he will understand." Marcus felt his throat tighten as he read the words. His uncle had known about his struggles, had thought of him, had cared enough to leave him this place. The gift suddenly felt more precious, weighted with meaning beyond mere property. He continued exploring, moving to the second bedroom, which his uncle had used as a study and workshop. A desk sat beneath the window, its surface covered with papers, maps, and what appeared to be sketches of the surrounding area. Tools hung on one wall, organized with meticulous care. A workbench held several projects in various stages of completion, a partially carved wooden bowl, a half-finished birdhouse, a small box made from different types of wood fitted together in an intricate pattern. Marcus spent the morning going through the desk, finding more journals, receipts for property taxes and supplies, and a folder containing the deed to the property and other legal documents. Everything was organized, everything in its place. His uncle had been a man of order and purpose, even in his isolation. It was early afternoon when Marcus returned to the main floor and began examining the living area more closely. He ran his hands along the bookshelves, pulled out volumes at random, and found many of them contained pressed flowers or handwritten notes in the margins. He checked the kitchen cabinets systematically, taking inventory of what was there and what he might need if he decided to stay for more than just a few days. As he moved around the room, Marcus noticed something odd about the floor. Most of it was made from wide planks of aged wood, fitted tightly together. But near the fireplace, there was a section where the planks seemed slightly different, the gaps between them just a fraction wider. He knelt down and ran his fingers along the boards, feeling for any irregularity. There. One of the planks moved slightly under his touch, just the barest shift. Marcus's heart began to beat faster. He went to the workshop and returned with a flathead screwdriver, then carefully worked it into the gap between the boards. With gentle pressure, the plank lifted, revealing that it was not nailed down, but rather designed to be removed. Beneath the plank was a space, and in that space was a metal box. Marcus stared at the box for a long moment, his mind racing with possibilities. His hands trembled slightly as he reached down and lifted it out. It was heavy, about the size of a large shoebox, made of steel with a simple latch but no lock. He carried it to the table and sat down, taking a deep breath before opening it. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were bundles of cash. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He pulled out one bundle and unwrapped it carefully. $100 bills held together with paper bands. He counted quickly, $10,000 in that bundle alone. He looked back into the box. There were more bundles, many more. With shaking hands, Marcus removed all the bundles from the box and laid them on the table. He counted each one methodically, hardly believing what he was seeing. When he finished, he sat back in his chair, stunned. There was $340,000 on the table before him. His mind reeled. Where had this money come from? Why had his uncle hidden it beneath the floorboards? Was it legal? Had Theodore been involved in something criminal? The questions tumbled over each other, and Marcus felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. This was too much, too sudden. Just days ago he had been sleeping on the street, and now he was sitting in a cabin he owned, looking at more money than he had ever imagined possessing. He forced himself to calm down and think rationally. He examined the bills carefully. They were not new, but they were not ancient either, dating from various years over the past 2 decades. There was nothing obviously illegal about them, no die packs or markings that would suggest they were stolen. They were simply cash, saved and hidden away. Marcus returned to the workshop and retrieved his uncle's journals, then spent the next several hours reading through them more carefully, searching for any mention of the money. Finally, in a journal from about 15 years earlier, he found an entry that provided some answers. "Sold the business today," Theodore had written. "Got a fair price, more than fair really. After taxes and paying off the debts, I am left with a substantial sum. I have deposited most of it in the bank, but I am keeping a portion in cash, hidden away. Call it an old man's paranoia, but I have never fully trusted banks, not after what I saw in my younger years. This money is my insurance, my emergency fund. And perhaps someday it will be Marcus's fresh start." Marcus closed the journal and sat in silence. The money was legitimate, earned from the sale of a business and saved over years. His uncle had intended it for him, had hidden it away as a gift, a legacy, a chance at redemption. The weight of that generosity settled over Marcus like a warm blanket, but with the discovery came new questions and concerns. What should he do with this money? Simply having this much cash was a responsibility he had never imagined bearing. He needed to think carefully, to plan, to not squander this incredible gift through hasty decisions or old mistakes. As evening approached, Marcus carefully rewrapped the money in the oilcloth and placed it back in the metal box. But instead of returning it to the hiding place beneath the floorboards, he carried it upstairs and placed it in the closet of the master bedroom, behind some folded blankets. He would need to figure out a better solution, perhaps open a bank account, but for now he wanted it close by. That night Marcus sat before the fire again, but sleep eluded him. His mind was too active, spinning with possibilities and plans. With this money he could truly start over. He could maintain the cabin, pay the taxes for years to come. He could buy a reliable vehicle, stock the pantry properly, make necessary repairs. He could even perhaps try to reconnect with his daughter, show her that he had changed, that he had been given a second chance and was determined not to waste it. But he also knew the dangers. Money could disappear quickly if not managed wisely. He had to be smart, disciplined, careful. He could not let himself fall back into old patterns, old addictions, old ways of thinking that had led him to the streets in the first place. This was not just a financial gift. It was a test of his character, a chance to prove to himself that he was still the man he had once been, or could become an even better version of that man. Over the next few days, Marcus threw himself into the work of making the cabin truly livable. He cleaned every surface, aired out every room, washed the linens and curtains. He made a list of supplies he would need and drove to the nearest town, a small community called Pine Ridge about 30 miles down the mountain. There, he bought groceries, cleaning supplies, and some basic tools. He was careful with his spending, using the cash Robert Chen had given him rather than dipping into his inheritance. In Pine Ridge, Marcus also located the county recorder's office and verified that the property taxes were indeed current. He introduced himself to the clerk, an older woman named Margaret who remembered his uncle. "Theodore Sullivan," she said with a warm smile. "A good man, quiet but kind. He would come into town once a month or so for supplies. Always paid his bills on time, never caused any trouble. We were sorry to hear of his passing. Did you know him well? Marcus asked. Margaret shook her head. Not well, no, he kept to himself mostly. But I remember once there was a family in town, the Hendersons, who lost their home to a fire. Theodore heard about it and showed up at the church with a donation, cash in an envelope, enough to help them get back on their feet. He did not want any recognition, just left it and went on his way. That is the kind of man he was. Marcus felt a swell of pride for the uncle he had never really known. Theodore had been a good man, a generous man, despite his isolation. It made Marcus even more determined to honor his uncle's memory by using this gift wisely and well. Back at the cabin, Marcus continued his exploration and renovation. He checked the roof and found it in better condition than expected, needing only minor repairs. He cleaned out the gutters, tested all the windows, and made sure the doors sealed properly. He split wood for the fireplace, stacking it neatly on the porch where it would stay dry. As he worked, Marcus felt something he had not experienced in years: purpose. Each task completed was a small victory, each improvement to the cabin a step toward building a real life. His body ached from the unaccustomed labor, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from honest work rather than the grinding pain of sleeping rough. One afternoon, while organizing the workshop, Marcus discovered another hiding place. Behind a loose board in the wall, he found a smaller metal box. Inside, this one was not money but documents, birth certificates including his uncle's and his father's, old photographs showing the two brothers as young men, smiling and carefree, and a letter addressed to Marcus. With trembling hands, Marcus opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. It was dated just a month before his uncle's death. "Dear Marcus," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am gone and you have found your way to my cabin. I hope it can be a refuge for you, as it has been for me. I want to explain some things, to help you understand why I left the family all those years ago, and why I have left everything to you now. Your father and I had a falling out over something that seems trivial now but felt monumental at the time. I made choices he could not forgive, and pride prevented both of us from reaching out to mend the breach. By the time I realized how foolish we had been, too many years had passed and your father had died. I regret that lost time more than I can express. I built this cabin as a place to escape, but also as a place to heal. In the solitude of these mountains, I found peace and purpose. I learned to live with my regrets and to appreciate the simple gifts of each day. I hope you can find the same here. I have followed your life from a distance, Marcus, and I know you have faced great hardships. I know about the accident, the losses, the struggles. I wish I had reached out to you, offered help when you needed it most. But I was a coward, afraid of rejection, afraid of reopening old wounds. So instead, I offer you this, a place to call home and the means to build a new life. The money hidden in the cabin is yours, earned honestly through years of work and saved with you in mind. Use it wisely. Let it be the foundation of your fresh start. Do not waste time on regret as I did. Do not let pride or shame keep you from reaching out to those you love. Life is short and precious, and connection with others is what gives it meaning. I learned that too late, but perhaps you still have time. Be well, nephew, make this place your own. Live the life you were meant to live. With love and hope, Uncle Theodore. Marcus read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. His uncle's words were a balm to wounds he had carried for years, a validation of his pain and a gentle push toward healing. He carefully folded the letter and placed it in his pocket, wanting to keep it close. That evening, as Marcus sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, he made a decision. He would stay. This cabin, this land, would be his home. He would honor his uncle's gift by building a life here, by becoming the man Theodore had believed he could be. But first, he needed to take care of practical matters. The next morning, Marcus drove back to Pine Ridge and opened a bank account, depositing most of the cash but keeping some on hand for immediate expenses. The bank manager, a friendly man named Tom, helped him set up automatic payments for the property taxes and utilities. Marcus also purchased a cell phone, his first in years, and set up a basic plan. With these foundations in place, Marcus began the work of truly settling in. He spent his days making improvements to the cabin and the property. He repaired the porch railing, replaced broken shingles, and painted the shutters. He cleared brush from around the cabin to reduce fire danger and planted a small vegetable garden in a sunny spot near the house. The physical work was therapeutic, giving Marcus time to think and plan. He thought about his daughter, Sarah, who would be 28 now, probably married, maybe with children of her own. He had not spoken to her in over a decade, not since she had told him she could not watch him destroy himself anymore. The memory of that conversation, of the pain in her eyes, still haunted him. Using his new phone, Marcus searched for her online and found her living in Portland, working as a teacher. He looked at her social media profiles, seeing pictures of her smiling with friends, posing with a golden retriever standing in front of a classroom. She looked happy and successful, and Marcus felt both pride and profound sadness. He had missed so much of her life. For weeks, Marcus debated whether to reach out. What would he say? How could he explain where he had been, what had happened to him? Would she even want to hear from him? The questions paralyzed him, and he threw himself into work on the cabin to avoid making a decision. Then one day, while cleaning out a closet, Marcus found a box of his uncle's photographs. Among them was a picture of himself as a young man, holding baby Sarah in his arms, his face glowing with joy and love. He stared at that photograph for a long time, remembering the man he had been, the father he had wanted to be. His uncle's words echoed in his mind. Do not waste time on regret. Do not let pride or shame keep you from reaching out to those you love. That night, Marcus composed a letter to his daughter. He wrote and rewrote it dozens of times, trying to find the right words. Finally, he settled on simple honesty. Dear Sarah, he wrote, I know I have no right to contact you after all these years of silence. I know I failed you as a father, and I am sorry for that in ways I cannot fully express. I do not expect forgiveness, and I am not asking for anything from you. I simply want you to know that I am alive, that I am sober, and that I think of you every day. I have been given a second chance at life, and I am trying to become the man I should have been all along. If you ever want to talk, I would welcome it. But if you prefer to leave the past in the past, I will understand. I love you, and I am proud of the woman you have become. Dad. He included his phone number and the address of the cabin, then mailed the letter before he could change his mind. The waiting that followed was agony. Days turned into weeks with no response, and Marcus tried not to let hope die completely. He told himself that he had done what he could, that the rest was up to Sarah, that he had to accept whatever decision she made. 6 weeks after sending the letter, Marcus's phone rang with an unknown number. His heart pounding, he answered. Dad. The voice was tentative, uncertain, but unmistakably Sarah's. Sarah, Marcus breathed, his voice breaking. Thank you for calling. I got your letter, she said. I did not know if I should respond, but I could not stop thinking about it. Are you really okay? I am, Marcus said. I really am. I have been sober for 4 months now. I have a home, a place up in the mountains. I am doing better than I have in years. They talked for 2 hours that first time, carefully at first, then with growing warmth. Sarah told him about her life, her job, her dog named Charlie. Marcus told her about the cabin, about Uncle Theodore's gift, about the work he had been doing to build a new life. He did not hide the hard parts, the years on the street, the struggles with addiction. He owed her honesty, at least. I would like to see you, Sarah said finally. Not right away, I need some time to process all this. But maybe in a few months I could come visit, see this cabin of yours. I would like that very much, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Whenever you are ready, you are welcome here. After they hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness of the cabin, overwhelmed by gratitude. He had not dared to hope that Sarah would respond, much less that she would want to see him. It was more than he deserved, and he vowed not to waste this chance to rebuild their relationship. As summer turned to fall, Marcus continued to improve the cabin and the property. He installed a wood stove in the workshop, making it usable even in cold weather. He repaired the chicken coop he had discovered behind the cabin and bought 6 hens, enjoying the simple pleasure of collecting fresh eggs each morning. He learned to identify the plants and trees around the property, discovering which were edible and which should be avoided. He also began exploring the 40 acres of land that surrounded the cabin. He found a stream that ran through the property, clear and cold, full of small trout. He discovered a meadow that bloomed with wildflowers in the spring and a rocky outcropping that offered a stunning view of the valley below. Each discovery deepened his connection to this place, making it feel more like home. In October, Sarah called to say she would like to visit in November, if that was okay. Marcus spent the next few weeks in a frenzy of preparation, wanting everything to be perfect. He cleaned the cabin until it shone, stocked the pantry with Sarah's favorite foods from her childhood, and even bought a new set of sheets for the guest bedroom. He was nervous and excited in equal measure, terrified of saying or doing something wrong but desperate to make a good impression. The day of Sarah's arrival, Marcus waited on the porch, watching the road. When her car finally appeared, his heart felt like it might burst from his chest. She parked and stepped out, and Marcus was struck by how much she looked like her mother, the same dark hair and gentle eyes. They stood looking at each other for a long moment, the years of separation hanging between them like a tangible thing. Then Sarah smiled, tentative but genuine, and said, "Hi, Dad." Marcus crossed the distance between them and pulled her into a hug, and she hugged him back. They stood there for a long time, neither wanting to let go, both feeling the weight of lost years and the hope of new beginnings. The visit was not without its awkward moments. There were topics they both avoided, old wounds that were still too tender to touch. But there were also good moments, wonderful moments. Marcus showed Sarah around the property, and she exclaimed over the views and the wildlife. They cooked dinner together in the cabin's kitchen, falling into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. They sat by the fire and talked, filling in the gaps of their separate lives, beginning the slow process of rebuilding trust and connection. On her last day there, Sarah said, "I am glad you found this place, Dad. I am glad you are doing well. I was so angry at you for so long, but I am trying to let that go. You are right, we both deserve a second chance." "Thank you," Marcus said simply, "for giving me that chance, for being willing to try. It means everything to me." After Sarah left, Marcus felt both elated and exhausted. The visit had gone better than he had dared hope, but he was also aware of how much work still lay ahead. Rebuilding their relationship would take time, patience, and continued effort, but he was committed to doing whatever it took. Sarah was his daughter, and she was worth fighting for. As winter approached, Marcus prepared the cabin for the cold months ahead. He stacked wood high on the porch, insulated the windows, and made sure the propane tank was full. He bought supplies in bulk from town, not wanting to risk being snowed in without necessities. He also purchased a generator as a backup in case the power went out, which Margaret in town assured him would happen at least once during the winter. The first snow came in late November, transforming the property into a winter wonderland. Marcus stood on the porch, watching the flakes fall silently through the trees, and felt a profound sense of peace. A year ago he had been sleeping on the streets, wondering if he would survive another winter. Now he stood in front of his own home, warm and safe, with money in the bank and hope in his heart. The transformation was almost miraculous. During the long winter evenings, Marcus took up some of his uncle's hobbies. He learned to carve wood, starting with simple projects and gradually improving. He read voraciously from his uncle's extensive library, educating himself on topics he had never had time for before. He even tried his hand at writing, keeping a journal as Theodore had done, recording his thoughts and experiences. He also began to give back to the community. He learned that Pine Ridge had a small homeless shelter that struggled for funding, and he made an anonymous donation, remembering what it felt like to need such services. He volunteered at the community center, helping with repairs and maintenance. He did not tell anyone about his past, but he worked hard and earned the respect of the townspeople. In the spring, Sarah visited again, this time bringing Charlie the dog. The golden retriever took to the property immediately, running through the meadow and splashing in the stream with boundless enthusiasm. Sarah seemed more relaxed this visit, and they talked more openly about the past. She told him about the pain of watching him spiral downward, of feeling helpless and angry. He listened without defending himself, acknowledging her hurt and apologizing for the pain he had caused. "I am not asking you to forget," Marcus said. "I just hope that over time you can forgive, and that we can build something new together, a relationship based on who we are now, not who we were then." "I think we can do that," Sarah said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I am willing to try." That summer, Marcus hired a local contractor to help him build a small addition to the cabin, a screened porch where he could sit in the evenings without being bothered by insects. He also improved the road leading to the property, making it more accessible. He was thinking long-term now, planning for a future that stretched out before him with possibility rather than dread. He also made another discovery. While digging a new garden bed, his shovel struck something hard. Curious, he excavated carefully and found a time capsule of sorts, a metal box buried about 2 feet down. Inside were more photographs, some military medals, and a letter from his grandfather to Theodore, written during World War II. The letter spoke of hope and survival, of looking forward to coming home and building a life. It was a reminder that his family had always been one of survivors, of people who endured hardship and found ways to carry on. Marcus added these items to his growing collection of family history. He was beginning to understand that the cabin was more than just a building. It was a repository of his family's story, a link to the past, and a bridge to the future. He felt a responsibility to preserve that history, to honor those who had come before. By the time the second anniversary of his arrival at the cabin rolled around, Marcus's life had been completely transformed. He had gained weight, filling out his gaunt frame with healthy muscle. His face had lost its haggard look, and his eyes were clear and bright. He had reconnected with Sarah, who now visited regularly and had even talked about bringing a boyfriend to meet him. He had friends in town, people who knew him as a reliable neighbor and a good man. Most importantly, he had found peace. The demons that had driven him to drink and despair had not disappeared completely, but he had learned to manage them, to face them with courage rather than running away. He attended AA meetings in Pine Ridge, sharing his story and listening to others, finding strength in community and shared struggle. The money his uncle had left him had been crucial to his transformation, but Marcus understood that it was not the money itself that had saved him. It was the opportunity the money represented, the breathing room it provided, the chance to focus on healing rather than mere survival. He had used it wisely, investing in the property and in his own future, but also giving back to others who were struggling as he once had. One afternoon in late summer, Marcus received a call from Robert Chen, the attorney who had first tracked him down on the streets of Seattle. Robert wanted to know how things were going, if the property had worked out for him. Marcus invited him to visit, wanting to show him what his uncle's gift had made possible. When Robert arrived a week later, he was visibly shocked by the transformation, both in Marcus and in the property. The cabin looked well-maintained and loved, the grounds were neat and productive, and Marcus himself appeared healthy and content. "This is remarkable," Robert said, looking around. "When I first found you, I was not sure you would even accept the inheritance. To see what you have done with it, it is truly inspiring." "I had help," Marcus said. "My uncle gave me more than just property and money. He gave me hope and a second chance. I am just trying to live up to his faith in me." They spent the afternoon talking, and Marcus learned more about Theodore's life. Robert had been his attorney for the last decade of his life and had grown to respect the older man greatly. Theodore had been a successful businessman in his younger years, running a small manufacturing company. He had sold it and retired to the mountains, seeking simplicity and peace. He had never married, had no children of his own, but he had followed Marcus's life from afar and had wanted to help. "He talked about you often in those last years," Robert said. "He felt guilty for not reaching out sooner, for not being there when you needed family. This cabin, the money, it was his way of trying to make amends. I think he would be very happy to see what you have done with it." After Robert left, Marcus sat on his new screened porch and thought about legacy. What would he leave behind when his time came? He had no great wealth beyond what his uncle had given him, no business empire or famous achievements. But perhaps his legacy could be simpler than that. A life lived with integrity, a relationship rebuilt with his daughter, a community served with quiet generosity. Perhaps that was enough. As the third year in the cabin began, Marcus decided to take on a new project. He wanted to write down his uncle's story and his own, to create a record for future generations. He spent his evenings at the desk in the workshop, typing on an old laptop he had purchased, trying to capture the journey from despair to hope, from homelessness to home. The writing was difficult, forcing him to confront painful memories and acknowledge his own failings. But it was also cathartic, helping him process everything that had happened and find meaning in the struggle. He wrote about the streets of Seattle, about finding Robert Chen, about the first sight of the cabin. He wrote about discovering the money and reading his uncle's letter. He wrote about the slow process of healing and the joy of reconnecting with Sarah. In December of that year, Sarah called with news that made Marcus's heart soar. She was engaged. She wanted him to walk her down the aisle at her wedding the following summer. Marcus accepted with tears of joy, overwhelmed by the honor and the trust it represented. He had not dared to hope that he would be included in such an important moment in her life, and the fact that she wanted him there spoke volumes about how far their relationship had come. The months leading up to the wedding were busy ones. Marcus wanted to contribute financially, but did not want to overstep or make Sarah uncomfortable. They compromised, with Marcus paying for the rehearsal dinner and offering the cabin as a venue for a post-wedding brunch. Sarah and her fiancé, a kind man named David who taught history at the same school where Sarah worked, visited several times to plan the event. The wedding took place in Portland in late June, a beautiful outdoor ceremony filled with love and laughter. Marcus stood beside his daughter, his heart so full he thought it might burst, and walked her down the aisle to meet her future husband. When the officiant asked who gave this woman to be married, Marcus said clearly, "Her mother and I do," honoring his ex-wife even though she was not there, acknowledging that they had both played a part in raising this remarkable woman. At the reception, Marcus gave a toast. He kept it short, not wanting to make the moment about himself, but he spoke from the heart about second chances and the power of forgiveness. He thanked Sarah for giving him the opportunity to be part of her life again and wished her and David a lifetime of happiness. There was not a dry eye in the room when he finished. The post-wedding brunch at the cabin was a huge success. Sarah's friends and family fell in love with the property, and Marcus enjoyed playing host, showing off the home he had worked so hard to create. David's parents, in particular, were impressed by the cabin and the life Marcus had built. They told him they admired his resilience and his commitment to change, and Marcus felt a deep sense of validation. He had come so far from the broken man on the streets of Seattle. As the guests left and quiet returned to the cabin, Marcus sat on the porch and reflected on the journey. 4 years ago, he had been at the absolute bottom with no hope and no future. Today, he had a home, a relationship with his daughter, friends, and a sense of purpose. The transformation was so complete that sometimes he could hardly believe it was real. But it was real as the cabin around him and the land beneath his feet. And it was all thanks to an uncle he had barely known, a man who had believed in him enough to leave him everything. Marcus silently thanked Theodore, hoping that somehow, wherever he was, his uncle knew that his gift had not been wasted, that it had changed a life and maybe even saved a soul. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Marcus celebrated his 5th year of sobriety, then his 6th, then his 7th. He watched as Sarah and David bought their first home, and he helped them with repairs and renovations, enjoying the chance to be a useful part of their lives. He continued his volunteer work in Pine Ridge, becoming a valued member of the community. He also began mentoring others who were struggling with addiction and homelessness. He shared his story at meetings and community events, offering hope to those who felt hopeless. He used his experience to help others navigate the difficult path from the streets to stability, offering practical advice and emotional support. It became one of the most fulfilling aspects of his new life, giving back to others what had been given to him, a chance. In the 8th year after inheriting the cabin, Sarah called with more news. She was pregnant. Marcus was going to be a grandfather. The announcement filled him with indescribable joy and a touch of fear. He wanted to be a good grandfather, to be present and involved in ways he had failed to be as a father. He vowed to himself that he would not let his grandchild down, that he would be the kind of grandfather every child deserved. When his grandson, Theodore Marcus, named in honor of both his grandfather and great-great-uncle, was born, Marcus held the tiny infant in his arms and wept. He thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. His uncle's generosity, his own determination to change, Sarah's willingness to forgive. It was all connected, all part of a larger story of redemption and grace. As little Theo grew, Marcus became a devoted grandfather. Sarah and David brought him to the cabin regularly, and Marcus taught him about nature, about the trees and animals, about the importance of hard work and taking care of what you have. He carved wooden toys for the boy and told him stories about his great-great-uncle Theodore and the legacy of resilience that ran through their family. Now, as Marcus approached his 70th birthday, he looked back on the past 17 years with profound gratitude. The homeless man who had inherited a deserted cabin had found far more than money beneath those floorboards. He had found hope, purpose, and a path back to the life he was meant to live. The fortune was not just the cash, though that had been crucial. The real fortune was the second chance, the opportunity to become the man he had always wanted to be. The cabin stood as it always had, solid and enduring, a testament to his uncle's foresight and generosity. But it was more than just a building now. It was a home filled with love and memories, a gathering place for family, a symbol of transformation and redemption. It was proof that it was never too late to change, never too late to find your way home.